was a cold December evening in 2016 when a year-long undercover operation reached a critical turning point around 6 p.m. Two officers were conducting surveillance on a silver Toyota Yaris spotted on Church Street in Baileystown, on Glasgow's eastern outskirts, when they spotted Mark Richardson climbing into a black Mini Cooper. Richardson, an Edinburgh-based gangster, had been linked to a criminal empire generating over £100 million a year, stretching from the housing schemes of Baileystown to the favelas of Brazil. The Yaris was one of several vehicles under surveillance as part of an extensive investigation into the gang's operations. Sensing the moment, the officers pursued the Mini Cooper. The chase ended with Richardson's arrest by the Organised Crime and Counter-Terrorism Unit. That single arrest marked the beginning of the end for one of Scotland's most dangerous and powerful crime syndicates. Mark Richardson was born in 1982 and raised in the tough, working-class areas of Glasgow, places where loyalty was currency and violence, especially knife crime, was a way of life. Though born in Edinburgh, it was in Glasgow that Richardson came of age, following in the footsteps of his father and stepping early into a world ruled by gang culture. By his late teens, during a time when Glasgow's streets were thick with crime, shoplifting, car thefts, gang fights, Mark saw more than chaos. He saw opportunity. Determined to rise above his environment, he set his sights on making money by any means necessary. By 15, he had already made a name for himself locally. By 19, he had fully embraced the criminal lifestyle, with his father at his side. Mark Richardson Sr. and Jr. began selling cocaine in the streets of Edinburgh, but the venture quickly caught the attention of the police. In a series of early morning raids, officers uncovered £30,000 in cash and cocaine with a street value of around $112,000. Along with the Richardsons, a third man, Richard Boner, was arrested. Boner had allowed his house to be used as a stash spot and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. In 2005, Mark Jr., just 19 at the time, was sentenced to 32 months behind bars, while his father received 4.5 years. After his release from prison, Mark Richardson wasted no time returning to the drug trade. He quickly re-established himself, forging connections with organised crime groups in Glasgow and Liverpool to funnel vast amounts of cocaine into Edinburgh. Richardson became the head of the Inch Cocaine Network, one of the most powerful drug gangs in the city at the time. Working closely with his right-hand man David Toker, a former soldier later jailed for 5 years and 3 months after being caught in possession of £450,000 worth of cocaine, the pair built a ruthless operation. From their base in South Edinburgh, Richardson commanded a network of hardened young criminals who controlled much of the city's cocaine supply. The Inch gang's rise sparked a violent turf war, linking them to a string of shootings across the capital as tensions escalated with rival gangs. Mark Richardson Jr.'s time behind bars would unknowingly mark a pivotal turning point in his criminal career. His rise had caught the attention of Glasgow's most notorious crime syndicate, the Daniels, led at the time by the feared and influential Jamie Daniel. Operating mainly out of Postle Park in North Glasgow, the Daniels were deeply entrenched in drug trafficking, violence, intimidation, money laundering, and international smuggling routes. For them, Richardson's reputation for both loyalty and brutality made him an ideal recruit. He started as a trusted enforcer, but Richardson wasn't just violent and dependable, he was ambitious and strategic. Before long, he was overseeing drug distribution across Glasgow's East End in the early 2000s. His role quickly expanded into international operations, forging links with criminal networks in Spain and Amsterdam. He established a pipeline funneling cannabis and cocaine into Scotland, rapidly growing in wealth, power, and status. But with rising influence came rising scrutiny. Richardson's name began appearing in more police reports, surveillance operations, and even murder investigations. He was now running a major trafficking operation, smuggling cocaine into Edinburgh from across the east of Scotland, northwest England, and parts of mainland Europe. He even began converting the imported cocaine into crack, cheaper, more addictive, and far more destructive. But the empire he was building wouldn't go unchecked for long. Law enforcement was closing in. In 2009, Mark Richardson was caught red-handed running a crack cocaine factory in a flat in Ferny Hill, Edinburgh. a bust that followed a 2-year investigation into his nationwide drug operation. Police entered through the flat's unlocked front door and found Richardson and his accomplice, Dylan McCallum, hard at work in the kitchen, not cooking dinner, but cooking crack. A large pot boiled on the stove as the pair, completely absorbed in their task, failed to notice the officers quietly entering behind them. The raid exposed a major drug operation. Officers recovered 40.8 kilograms of Class A drugs, cocaine, heroin, and crack cocaine, worth a potential street value exceeding £2 million. It was one of the largest seizures of its kind in Scotland. A wider investigation led to 66 arrests, resulting in 14 convictions and a combined 44 years of prison time. Richardson received 10 of those years. At the time, Richardson was also a key player in 2 major operations, trafficking large volumes of cocaine into Edinburgh, but behind bars, he was forced to leave his carefully built empire behind and wait. After his release, Richardson kept a low profile. His name still surfaced in a few police reports, but nothing stuck. That silence, however, was short-lived. By December 2016, he was back in the spotlight. His downfall accelerated on December 19, when a Police Scotland helicopter tailed him hitting speeds of 65 miles per hour through the north of Glasgow. The helicopter had been deployed as part of a targeted operation to track him, and officers spotted him climbing into the black Mini Cooper. Realizing he was being followed, though it's believed he initially thought it was rival gangsters, Richardson panicked. He sped off, driving on the wrong side of the road before ditching the car at an Esso petrol station on Kepperkill Road. He jumped into another vehicle, but was soon intercepted and arrested by officers from the Organised Crime and Counter-Terrorism Unit. In 2018, Richardson was sentenced to 18 months for culpable and reckless conduct during the high-speed pursuit. But that wasn't the only sentence looming over him. Until his arrest, Mark Richardson operated at the helm of a powerful crime syndicate, one that would eventually unravel that same year. The gang went to extraordinary lengths to conceal its vast criminal operation, hiding a terrifying arsenal of weapons, huge quantities of drugs, and millions in dirty cash. Their firearms were stashed inside custom-built hidden compartments within a fleet of vehicles, stored in heavily fortified lockups. To stay one step ahead of the authorities, they deployed cutting-edge surveillance technology, constantly monitoring for signs of infiltration. At its peak, the network was importing up to 1 million wraps of cocaine each year, posing one of the biggest challenges to covert policing in Scotland, and indeed the UK. With an annual turnover of more than £100 million, the gang had built a sprawling criminal empire stretching across Britain and Europe. Members even travelled to Brazil, brokering deals directly with drug cartels to smuggle high-purity cocaine into the UK via West Africa. But everything shifted with Richardson's dramatic arrest. After being tackled to the ground by officers, a set of keys was found in his pocket, keys to the silver Toyota Yaris. On the surface, it was just an ordinary car, but inside, it held a trove of evidence that would unravel a criminal empire and mark the beginning of the end for one of Scotland's most dangerous gangs. Officers quickly grew suspicious when they noticed a key fob that didn't activate any alarms on the Toyota Yaris. Their hunch paid off. Hidden in the car's cluster light was a Bluetooth receiver, which the fob controlled. When activated, it triggered a hydraulic ram in the boot, raising a concealed metal plate. Beneath it, police found a neoprene holster containing a 9mm Glock 17 handgun, loaded with 15 bullets and bearing Mark Richardson's DNA. Just a week later, the investigation led officers to an industrial unit on Croftside Avenue in Croftfoot, South Glasgow. There they recovered several sets of car keys, including one labelled Annie. Cross-referencing those keys with addresses tied to the gang, detectives uncovered more. On February 5th, they arrived at a lockup on Whittingham Drive in Anniesland, West Glasgow. The space, rented under a false name, held a chilling discovery. 11 firearms, all carefully packaged and labelled. Among them were Glock pistols, a Heckler & Koch submachine gun, and even an M75 hand grenade. Meanwhile, another unit on Westburn Farm Road in Cambuslang had served as a crucial logistical hub. It was here that gang members Francis Mulligan and Anthony Woods worked to modify some of the group's £250,000 fleet of vehicles, equipping them with secret compartments to hide weapons and drugs. The weapons cache didn't just reveal a deadly arsenal, it unlocked a forensic goldmine. Among the finds was a Beretta 9000 pistol, later confirmed to have been used in the brutal torture of Robert Allan in March 2015. His DNA on the weapon would become a key piece of evidence in dismantling Scotland's most dangerous crime syndicate. Allan's nightmare began in May 2013, when notorious gangster James the Don White turned up at his door. He handed Allan 2 kilograms of cocaine, worth £90,000, on a so-called bail deal. No money up front, sell the drugs, repay the debt from the profits. Whether Allan agreed willingly or had no choice is unclear, but backing out wasn't an option. White connected him with Barry O'Neill, a close associate of the feared Gillespie brothers, who oversaw the handover. The drugs were hidden in a modified car, tucked behind a false registration plate, but Allan's plan to move the product through Scotland's nightlife scene fell apart when one of the batches turned out to be contaminated and unsellable. The profits never came. The debt, however, remained, and excuses didn't cut it in this world. Phone calls from White demanding repayment came daily, each more aggressive than the last. Then came a chilling twist. The drugs hadn't belonged solely to White. They were property of the Gillespie brothers, 2 of the most violent and ruthless crime lords in the UK. Barry Gillespie began contacting Allan directly, escalating the pressure. Fearing for his life, Allan went dark, stopped answering calls, and fled north, eventually settling in Portsmouth in a desperate attempt to disappear. But no one runs from the Gillespies. The gang launched a relentless manhunt, using GPS trackers and brute intimidation. Allan's friends and family were threatened, his movements monitored. The message was unmistakable: no debt goes unpaid. By early 2015, Allan was £30,000 in the red. That debt sealed his fate. In March of that year, he was located in Barnsley. Armed enforcer David Sell and 2 accomplices kidnapped him and drove him to a remote industrial unit in Fordhouse, Midlothian. What followed was torture, straight out of a nightmare. Allan was chained, beaten with a metal bar, and had his legs smashed with a 14-pound sledgehammer. A silenced Beretta was used to pistol whip him. That same weapon, later recovered by police, held his DNA, irrefutable proof of what had occurred. The brutal assault wasn't just an act of gang violence, it became a turning point, a moment that forced police to act decisively. It blew the lid off a criminal empire built on fear, drugs, and bloodshed. And it was the beginning of the end for the Gillespie brothers. In January 2018, Mark Richardson was sentenced to 8 years and 9 months in prison for possession of a Glock handgun, seized in Glasgow's Baillieston area. He was sentenced alongside the rest of his crew, bringing a dramatic end to one of Scotland's most dangerous crime syndicates. In total, 9 men were jailed, including David Sell, who admitted to the abduction and torture of Robert Allan. Sell received the harshest sentence, 15 years and 8 months. Altogether, the gang was handed a combined total of 87 years behind bars. Richardson is currently serving his sentence at HMP Low Moss. Years later, Mark Richardson's trusted lieutenant Michael Heaps orchestrated a high-stakes cocaine scam from his prison cell. Heaps arranged for a courier to rip off Dubai-based crime boss Ross McGill with £500,000 in fake notes during a 5-kilo cocaine deal. The betrayal ignited chaos. McGill, a former Rangers Ultras leader, was furious. He ordered a wave of violence across Scotland's central belt, including stabbings, shootings, and firebombings. The feud began with the abduction and slashing of the Edinburgh middleman who had brokered the deal, dragged back from Thailand and attacked in the street. But McGill didn't stop there. Blaming Richardson directly, he declared war on anyone tied to him. His TMJ gang launched coordinated attacks on homes and businesses linked to Richardson in Edinburgh and East Lothian throughout March 2025. By April, the violence spread to Glasgow, where McGill targeted the Daniel crime clan over their close ties to Richardson. The homes of clan boss Stephen Bonzo Daniel and his uncle Norman were torched in Bishopbriggs. In late May, 2 men were attacked with machetes in a garage owned by Robert Daniel in East Kilbride. Days later, Richardson ally David Macmillan was ambushed and slashed outside his Edinburgh home by 4 masked men. Although reports claimed a truce was reached on May 30, the next day saw Ross Monaghan and Eddie Lyons shot dead outside a bar in Fuengirola, Spain. In recent weeks, chilling footage released by TMJ promised the war against Richardson will continue for many years to come. That was it for today's video. What are your thoughts on today's topic? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see our next videos.